here with Sarvagya Pandey from India, who is a technical architect and development manager. In other words, he's been through some interesting challenges in his development career. We're going to hear from him how he tackled what seems to many Magento developers as a pretty difficult challenge, how he overcame that. And I'm really excited to bring him on here and hear from him today how he did that. But first, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or any other place that provides podcast distribution. We are there, and I would love for you to be able to hear all of the other incredible people that we are bringing on here in the future as well, to hear their stories about how they conquered, how they smashed these bugs. So, welcome, Sarvagya, and it's wonderful having you here. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself briefly, and share what you do, and then we'll dive into this challenge that you faced that you smashed.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for the introduction. And it's great to talk to you here. About myself, I am Sarvagya, and I am from India. I work for an development agency. I mostly work on Magento projects, and
Okay.
my role is to work on the development things, transforming problems into the solution, and how we can actually implement it into the Magento. And as you mentioned, that I have worked on MSI, and I will be sharing my experiences with MSI and how I actually worked on it. Yeah. So first thing first, like the first challenge was to understand MSI, because when I worked on it, it was just launched, and we wanted to know how it works actually, not from the perspective of development, just in the
Right.
perspective of what are the user flows, what are the use cases there, what is the so we checked what are the main pillars of the MSI, and it is sources, stocks, how they are assigned to the stores, and how the saleable quantity, how the reservations work. So we went through it, and we checked all the front end and admin user flows.
Okay.
Once we understood it, we knew that exactly what are the requirements in the project and what we already have in Magento. So
So
we
basically,
listed down the
you were mapping so you had the project. Someone said that they needed to customize MSI. You first went through and said, okay, what is MSI exactly? How does it work? It's not just a documentation level, but you were diving into the code, understanding and working through this process in maybe a sample or development environment, working through it to understand it, and then you were working to map what the customers' requirements were with what Magento currently offered.
exactly. So I
Okay.
listed out the exactly the what are the changes which we want to do,
Okay.
and we tried to divide it into different things. For example, like like we were working on a saleable quantity.
Okay.
So we wanted to modify saleable quantity in MSI. So it is a different task, and we also want to work on the reservation. So we divided task into multiple tasks as smaller unit as we can. So when we had this actual concrete task which we want to do, we started looking more into the actual code which already Magento provides. And the biggest challenge with MSI is that it has its code is dispersed in a lot of modules.
Really?
One,
There's probably
yeah,
what, 25 modules, 30 modules, something like that, and trying to understand what's
exactly,
going on in there is kind of difficult, isn't it?
exactly. And there are some modules which have only one plugin.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is like this, and we wanted to get a clear information of what are these modules, why we have it. And the second challenge which we faced is that at that particular time MSI was not in use, in a lot of places, so we were not getting more information on Stack Exchange or community forums. So we have to go with whatever we have, so we have to do it all ourselves. So we started to using a lot of tools, a lot of things, so that we can get more and more information about it. And we actually found that, okay, for this particular change we want to work on this particular module, for this particular change we want to work on this particular module. So, for example, we worked on module reservation a lot. We use module reservation API for that, and we also worked on module stock status. So it's just an example like how we
Yes.
actually approach this problem. So another thing which I would like to mention is something which is always there. Like no, regardless of what feature we are working, we have to see that that particular change which we are doing should not break Magento or Magento
Yes.
functionality when
Hmm.
we do the upgrade or whenever we want to make any other changes. So how to isolate our functionality from all those conflicts is also very important.
Hmm.
So we take all these considerations while we were working on the MSI. So if I have to summarize it, first was to get all the information, user flows. Second was to understand Magento code. Third was to use the tools and other things so that we can get the information of, okay, my code goes from here to there, and
Right.
these are the things which I want to change.
Yes, absolutely. That makes sense. And I think one of the biggest aspects, or one thing I'd like to dive into a little bit, is your comment about understanding all locations where the functionality is present, because
Yep.
I think, and that's one of the biggest challenges I've faced in fixing bugs, building customizations to existing ideas, is that uh, we might think of one particular workflow, but like take the case of editing a product or saving a product, for example. That could happen via importing it via CSV. That can happen via like a mass attribute update. Of course, that can happen via product save. That can also happen via the API. And I think for MSI, it's kind of similar. I mean, there's a ton of different places. So how did you figure out all the locations that a given idea or concept is touched or used?
Okay, so for that we did our research, and the like I start my research from the factor of areas. So
Hmm.
like we looked into what are the areas involved into this functionality. For
Hmm.
example, if we are talking about MSI, MSI is going to be used for products. So we have to see from where areas, what are the areas which can use MSI. What are, like, for as you mentioned, from the API's point of view, we have to see it, and from the point of view of
Hmm.
admin panel, we have to see it also, because we were somehow managing it from the front end also. That was particular our case, so we have to check that particular area also. And there are some of the things, some of the data which is very easy to find when we're working into the admin area, where in front end we do not get it in the same way. That was also a kind of challenge. But yes, once we get this 360-degree view, it is always like, okay, we know what we are doing.
Okay. So it's just a matter of, mostly from your perspective, it's a matter of being thorough, making sure you've covered all bases, and you're fully comfortable. This is all of the touch points that is located here for this particular problem.
Yes, yes. So
Hmm.
that so this thing can be achieved in a different ways. But yes, once we look from all the areas, when once we look from all the, I will say, all the well, kind of events and observers, if we go through those lists, we can get a very good picture of, okay, where it can be used.
Exactly. Okay, that's good, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So basically, the other tool that I heard that you talking about is probably one of the most overlooked tools in any software platform, except for software as a service, Shopify or BigCommerce, for example, and that would be the code, right? So you guys were very into the code, understand exactly what's happening and where, which gives you that, again, that granular understanding of how to build this out. You like you mentioned, Stack Overflow and or Magento Stack Exchange, and even the dev docs. I don't think were fully built out, probably around the time that you were doing. And this, honestly, dev docs still could probably use a little help about MSI. I
Yeah.
mean, it's complex enough, but you guys dove straight into the code. You took advantage of that tool that was available to you, and that's what allowed this project to be a success in this case.
Yep. Yep. So I mostly rely on Xdebug a
Hmm.
lot. So we use
Good for you.
Xdebugger, and that's the thing which gives us more information about where the code is traveling.
Did you
So
know
I
Did you
Yep.
know that I think about 30% of developers either do not know about Xdebug or do not use Xdebug? 30% of e-commerce developers is probably a little bit more on the Magento side, so I can't speak for all e-commerce developers, but 30%. That when I in a survey we did recently saw that number, that was just mind blowing. It's like the value of Xdebug, like you're mentioning there, is phenomenal, and that allowed you to get into and solve this problem effectively. But 30%, what would you say to those people who don't have Xdebug? How would you encourage them to take that time to
I
learn it and use it?
Yeah, first, like I would like to ask them one question first, that
Uh-huh.
how you are managing it. Otherwise,
You're right, exactly. Yes.
because for me, Xdebug is like a hand, because
Yeah.
it's how I go into the code.
Yes.
So if they are able to manage it without Xdebugger, it's like they are actually making it very complex for themselves. I think it's
Hmm.
very easy to do it using Xdebugger. I'm not saying it is not possible doing it other way, but I think it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult if you're not using any, like if you're not actually using any profiler at all, then it is
Hmm.
very difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
Apart from them, I like for the performance basis, I use New Relic mostly. So
Okay.
that is also one tool I would like to mention.
Hmm.
But yes, I'm very much like surprised by this number 30%, because I,
Yes.
I was not aware of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be sharing a lot more about that survey here in the upcoming weeks. I'm really stoked about it. There's some really cool stuff I learned out of that, and I'll be looking forward to share that. But that was one thing I just saw right off the bat. I was like, wow, 30%. Boy, we got to do something about that. And I think we can do that. I'm curious. Switching gears a little bit, how are you continually improving your skills? So obviously dealing with these difficult situations, that's probably the best way of all to improve skills, right? But beyond that, like how do you improve your skills? How do you recommend others improve their skills to really be the sharpest uh, e-commerce developer that we can possibly be?
For me, I will say that it's a kind of journey. If I treat my career as a journey, then it becomes very easier for me to map it. Okay, right now
Mm-hmm.
I'm here, and then after this much time I should learn this skill or learn this technology, and I will become there, and that is how I try to map it in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if I talk about learning things, SwiftOtter was the best resource, I would say. That like in my Magento journey, SwiftOtter
I'm glad.
was like a lot of, I will say it has a lot of input
Okay.
in what I know right now. And apart from that, it's very important to actually get into the things, like to have the awareness of the things. For example, Xdebugger or
Mm-hmm.
other tools or other information, how to approach community forums, how to check Stack Exchange, and how to actually read dev docs, how to implement those things, because that is also very important. So
Mm-hmm.
if we look from this perspective, that I want to learn while I'm working, then the learning becomes very relevant to our work, and we never go off from it. We always keep learning.
Yes.
And if I talk about specifically learning, then I think that I do one thing, which is that whatever I have implemented, I always revisit my work.
Hmm.
So that sometimes helps me, because every time, like I'll be very honest with you, it's kind of funny, but every time when I see my code, like 3 months 6 months old code, I do not like it.
That is a
I sometimes.
I will interrupt you there. That is a very good sign. I have heard that over and over again. You should be embarrassed of the code that you write X number of months ago, a year ago, whatever. Like that shows that you are consistently improving, and it's something to be very proud of. So it's always entertaining, but it's a mark of a great developer, a mark of somebody who is constantly progressing when that is the case. So I am really glad to hear that. Good for you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thanks for your appreciation. But yes, it's actually, I find it funny. So I try to look from I just give you one example. Like if I
Okay.
talk about 1 year before, like I was not using APIs and repositories that much, and now I know. And now when I know it, I'm like, okay, why I have implemented this like this, and we already have this much of APIs. So like it's it's funny that it's implemented this way. And I also try to share with other people in my company, so that I can learn from them, they can learn from me,
Hmm.
and we can have this kind of environment where people can talk about talk about the things they have implemented, or even they have implemented it wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
giving that comfort is also important.
No, I get that. I get that. That is good. That is good. I'm really, it's a wonderful thing to hear, and I'm really proud of you in progressing and pushing yourself. I hate to say it, and I guess let me just ask you. I'll ask this in a form of a question. I see so many developers who even have a senior title. I don't know exactly what you would consider yourself in the mix, but so many developers who have a senior title and yet they've stagnated. They kind of do the same thing they did 2 years ago or 4 years ago, and maybe it's changed a little bit with some going from Magento 1 to Magento 2, maybe a little bit, but how do you keep from stagnating? And I'm guessing part of your answer is going to be that you go back and review your code from previous solutions. But I'm curious, like beyond that, is there anything that you do to keep from this stagnation and this? Because ultimately it gets boring at that point. Like if you stop growing, I think it can get boring. You get burned out, and then I don't know, I see a whole bunch of things happen at that point, and they're not necessarily career advancing moves at that point. What would your advice be in those type of situations?
See, for me, it is very important. Like for me, I can only work for a longer period if I make my work interesting. And how I can make interesting? By challenging myself, or by taking challenges which are thrown on me by maybe client, maybe my
Hmm.
company. So this so so how I can stop this thing is that, first of all, I do not consider something like senior, or it is right now I'm working as a technical architect and development manager in my company, but I have never seen myself like I have grown from the position of junior developer. For me, I'm always a junior developer.
Hmm.
So I always keep this thing in my mind that regard like the title is nothing, and knowledge is also something which is changing very fastly. For example, right now, we all who are in Magento development from a very longer period of time, we are very much bound with PHP background and server side rendering, and right now Magento is transforming, and like many things are coming up, and many things are coming up from many directions, right? So
Hmm.
when I check those things, when I look into the other things, I see, okay, I cannot say that I know this. I still need to learn a lot. So
Right.
if for to summarize this, I will say that from the Magento community, I get this inspiration to not stop learning. They are doing
Okay.
great. They are
Yes.
doing great. And I want to quote Ben Marks. I remember there was one Magento community event, and he said, getting awareness is equal to getting started.
Hmm.
And and I always revisit that quote in my mind, and I always say, okay, whenever I get awareness about any technology, anything happening in Magento, I get started learning it. I get this thing, okay, I have to start
Yes.
it, and I get started learning it. And when I get started learning it, I see, okay, I'm still a junior developer and I need to learn.
That's excellent. That is excellent. I love that. The idea I'm always a junior developer. There's a lot of aspects that brings into it. Humility, a constant eagerness, a desire to improve, realizing that there is that much further I can always improve. And I think that brings up a danger with having the title of senior developer. Senior is kind of the top of the pecking order, right? So it intrinsically implies that there is no further we can go, and that's a dangerous thing because there is much further we can go. There always is. There's always a new idea we can implement or a new way we can approach problems, and I totally agree with you in that. I think that's this is excellent. So, any final thoughts? It's like, what would you suggest is the number one thing a developer should learn?
Debugging.
Debugging.
The more time you invest learning debugging skills, it will help you in your work a lot. It will cut down the time maybe by 50%.
Excellent. Well,
And for that, go for the tools. I like Xdebugger. You might like something else. And for the application
mhm,
performance, go for New Relic. I like it, and you
excellent.
may you might also like it as well.
Oh yes, I've used New Relic some. I would not consider myself an expert at it, but I love Xdebug. I use that all the time. Like that is, like you said, that's my hand when it comes to debugging.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
if I didn't have that, I do feel like my hand's cut off and pretty useless at that point. But that's great. I appreciate that, and then the cool thing is with the art of debugging, my goal is the book that I'm working on. The goal is to help people become effective developers or debuggers, and I'm really excited about that. And I don't know if you've shared your thoughts yet on that, but if you haven't, I'd love to offline. I'll share it with you and get your thoughts on that. So, anyways, I appreciate you coming on, Survey, and I appreciate your thoughts. Some great thoughts, very inspirational, good stuff there. So, thank you for coming on, and look forward to we'll have to do it again sometime.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, and it was really great talking to you. Have a great day.
Boy, it was really inspirational, and I think my favorite quote of the whole time there. We learned a lot, but my favorite thing was talking about always being a junior developer, always having that mindset. It's like, wow, that hit me in a way that I have not thought of that in ever. I've never thought of it like that. So that was excellent, an incredibly powerful mindset that we should all have. So again, if you want to continue learning and hearing from some great people, some great professionals, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube or Apple or Spotify or anywhere else that these podcasts are typically aggregated. We are there and look forward to bringing more of these incredible stories to you. So thank you for coming on and joining.